everyone, welcome to the Professor's Kitchen. For those of you who follow me over on the Professor's Kitchen YouTube page, you may already know quite a bit about why I started the Professor's Kitchen Facebook page in the first place, and maybe a little bit about why I started the Professor's Kitchen YouTube page as well. But for those of you who don't know, the kitchen is supposed to be sort of an extension of my classroom, and I am actually an English professor, and I teach literature and composition classes and things like that, but I am definitely a student of the world. I love learning new things, and I love sharing those new things that I've learned with other people, because to master anything, you have to be able to teach it to others. That is true mastery of any subject. So I am in the practice of trying to teach things to new people and share things with as many people as I possibly can. And I started a little something called a Fun Fact Friday over on the Professor's Kitchen Facebook page, so you can check that out. And this Friday, I really wanted to do something really fun. And my idea initially was to do something that revolved around the new television series from Shondaland called Bridgerton, which quite a few of my friends I found out have already binged watched, as have I. And that was sort of my idea. I was going to talk about some of the things that I found kind of fun and intriguing and interesting about the time period and the costumes and all of those different things. And then Wednesday happened, and I am generally a pretty positive person. I try to look for the silver lining in things, and I definitely wanted to keep the Professor's Kitchen upbeat and entertaining, which is why there are so many taco memes on Tuesdays. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the more serious things going on in the world as well, and try to shed some light on them, just kind of from my perspective. And why is my perspective any more or less interesting than other people's? It probably isn't, but I thought that it would be a good way just for me to share what I've learned from living overseas with my American friends, especially. American friends, American family. I hope that you learned something from this. If not, that's fine. I'm not in the practice of shoving education down anyone's throat. But if you are interested, you can like and subscribe to this channel to learn more about some of my travels and interests and things like that. I will always try to throw in some very factual information as well as my opinion, and I will let you know when something is fact and when something is just my opinion. I'll try to make sure to do that and leave all of that information in the description box below. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, complaints, you can leave that in the comments. Let me know if you would like to see that video about Bridgerton and get my take on the historical time period and costumes and all that fun stuff. And if there's something else that you want to hear about, also let me know in the comments section below, or you can visit me over on the Professor's Kitchen Facebook page, which I will also link in the description. But today I want to talk about two things that I've noticed just from living abroad, and answer some kind of a frequently asked question, two frequently asked questions. One, what was my favorite place to live abroad? And two, if I had a choice to live anywhere in the world, where would I settle? And the first question, the answer is kind of weird. So we don't really have a choice to live where we live. My husband, as many of you know, is in the Army, and he's a lawyer, and so this is his job, and we have to travel wherever he decides that, where the Army decides that he needs to go. So we really don't have much choice in the matter right now, but maybe in the future we will get a chance to say where we want to settle. And I honestly don't know where I want to settle. We started off this whole journey together when we first got married. We were stationed for 2 years in Seoul, South Korea, which I absolutely loved. There was so much to see and so much to do, and we had so much fun while we were there. I could have spent the rest of my days in Seoul, South Korea. Like, they really had to drag me back to the States kicking and screaming. I loved living there. The convenience of everything, the food, the travel, the people, the culture. It was just amazing, and I absolutely loved it. And then a couple years later, we again didn't really have a choice. We can suggest places or request going specific places, but they don't necessarily have to give us our first choice or second choice or any of our choices, really. They can just say no. And in this case, they didn't really say no, but they sent us somewhere that was somewhere on the list. It was somewhere on the list. We spent a couple of years in Texas, and honestly, I think the best thing about Texas is probably the weather. The people are nice for the most part, and we did kind of enjoy living there, but honestly, if I never have to live so close to Fort Hood again, it'll be too soon. I absolutely hated when they were practicing over at Fort Hood, and there'd be these huge explosions, and it shook the walls of the house, and it really freaked me out the first time I heard it. And yeah, I don't think that the trade-off is worth it to have really nice weather and to live someplace where there are like explosives going off. And it's a bit of a food desert too. You kind of have to drive to like Dallas or Austin or something like that and really get a feel for Texas and everything. So that was the 2 years that we spent in Texas. And then we put in a request. My husband asked me, where else would you want to go? If we have to leave here, where would you want to go? And I said, Italy, Germany, England, pretty much all overseas places. And he kind of looked at me and was like, US? Not so much. I really have no desire to live in the States ever again, but I'll get to that in a minute. Living in Germany, we somehow magically ended up in Germany, and I was very happy about it. I am very happy about it. We've been here for almost 4 years now, and it has just really been an incredible experience. I'm not terribly fond of Germany itself, but it is in Europe, and so we have had, again, a lot of opportunities to travel to different places. I get asked a lot where my favorite vacation spot is, and that is, without a doubt, Spain. I can go just about anywhere in Spain, and again, the food, the people, the culture, it's just the architecture, the art, it's everything about it just amazes me. And we've been to a couple of different cities, we've been to an island, we stayed on Mallorca, and again, like absolutely everything was wonderful. They're warm, they're welcoming, and we ate a lot of tapas, which I never get tired of tapas, because how could you? They're just little plates, and there's so many of them. It's fabulous. Plus, being in this life means that we have friends all over the world. So when we were in Barcelona, we visited with friends when we were there. We've gone to England, and again, we visited with friends when we were there. So we have had some really amazing experiences, and we've gotten a chance to share a lot of that with friends and family as we've traveled to all these different places. So Germany, duty station number 3, and in Europe, so you can't really complain about that. But one of the sort of benefits, I think, of living abroad is getting that opportunity to take a step back and to look at the United States with a different perspective. It gives you a whole lot of perspective if you allow it to. If you really take in the culture and immerse yourself in the place that you live, you really get a completely different perspective of things. And living in South Korea, for instance, I was an expat teacher. I had my alien registration card. I was very official. I had a pension while I was there that I got to take with me when I left the country. And I can go into like a ton of details, if you want me to, later in another video, about living and teaching in South Korea. But basically, I never worried about much of anything. There was no gun violence. We never heard about school shootings or anything like that. It was safe for me to walk at night. We basically lived in an alley, and I never had any issues at all with safety. It was generally pretty quiet, especially like really late at night when we weren't really supposed to be out. All the soldiers had curfews, so it got pretty quiet as it got to be pretty late. And I just never really worried about it at all. We had a really wonderful time and felt completely safe to walk around whenever, day or night. And part of it was probably pretty naive in that we didn't speak the language, so if there was some sort of news story about something bad that happened, we didn't know what they were saying anyway, and so it kind of trickled down to us. We eventually got the news from an American news source or from an English news source, that a Korean news source in English. But for the most part, it was pretty uneventful, and I have zero complaints about living there. But as far as looking at things that were going on in the United States, it felt uncomfortable sometimes having to report those things to my students in order to have conversations with them about living in the United States, what it would be like for them if they did have to travel there or visit there for their jobs or whatever the case may be. It got kind of difficult to explain things, and definitely to explain things from a Black American perspective. For those of you who don't know, Black Americans have started a movement, really, that they're calling Blaxit. They're people who are calling themselves Black refugees. They are escaping the United States, and they're really trying to get away and start lives in other countries for safety reasons. And say what you want about people running away from the problem. Kudos to those people who are staying and fighting for their freedom and for what they believe in. But I think that leaving the country is a little bit more about self-preservation than it is about just leaving people behind and running away from any problems. And that's just the way I see it. I have two small children, and so I have more than just myself to think about when it comes to these things. And so for me, I would prefer to live somewhere abroad because I have that responsibility. I have to be able to keep myself together and intact long enough to raise my children to adulthood. They have to reach adulthood, and they look like me and my husband. And so they are tiny brown people, and the United States right now just does not seem like a very safe place for them. And it's difficult to choose a safe place for us to live. And that freedom of movement that we have here in Europe and the freedom of movement that we had in South Korea, where we could kind of choose different countries to visit and there weren't as many issues with, whereas in the United States, we would have to kind of pick and choose what states to go to. Everyone now is kind of familiar with, I think, the Green Book of safe travels for Black people. That's not completely a thing, but it is somewhat still a consideration that Black people have. We literally Google phrases like safe places for Black people to travel before we travel. And white people don't think about things like that. You don't have to. You have the luxury of not thinking about things like that. The freedom to not have to think about things like that. So when it comes to where in the world do I want to live, it's a really difficult question for me to answer in the sense that I can't pinpoint that one place. I don't think that I've traveled and lived in enough places to say for sure that I want to live in this one place. But I can say for sure where I don't want to live, and I don't want to live in the United States. So that's kind of a problem since I'm technically an American and I have a US passport. I think it's terribly problematic, but like I said, after I saw what I saw at the Capitol on Wednesday, I think that there's a lot of division and I fear for my safety. I feel fear for my family's safety. I think that we are better off abroad. I would like to even see what it's like to live in an African country, maybe in Ghana or South Africa, because I want my kids to be able to walk out their door and see other people like them and feel comfortable around people like them. My 4-year-old came home one day from daycare, and in spite of the fact that she had really incredible teachers here who adored her and who also looked like her, she wanted her hair to look like her classmates. And there's nothing wrong with admiring your classmates for their looks or whatever, but when we talk about beauty standards for Black Americans, we're just now getting to the point where we can just be ourselves and wear our hair in natural styles. And we're still fighting for the right to be able to wear our natural hair into the workplace. So that's just really a difficult thing to explain to a 4-year-old. Whereas I wouldn't have to explain it if we lived in a country where everyone wore their natural hair or where everyone switched up their hair. And so sometimes it was natural and sometimes it wasn't. Then she would just, I think, feel more herself and she would feel like she fit in and she didn't have to change herself in any way to appear like her peers. So I've definitely seriously thought about living in an African country. And if it weren't for the infrastructure issues that I've read about, I would probably drop everything and try to figure out how we could move to Ghana specifically. That's the one that I think one country I've looked into the most. And so, yeah, that's kind of at the top of my list of places to check out and maybe try living there for a year and see what it's like and see how the kids react to it. But otherwise, like I said, I do love living in Europe, but my favorite place so far is South Korea. And if you want an exclusive South Korea breakdown video, maybe like my top 5 things that I loved about living in South Korea, again, leave me a comment below. And if not, I hope that you learned a little bit about just perspective and taking a step back. I encourage you all to study abroad if you can, or travel abroad if you can, and take that step back and really listen and reflect on what people around you are saying about the United States when you don't live there, when you're not there. Listen to what other people are saying about the United States. We have really done a really horrible job of looking strong and united. When it comes to our adversaries, they see everything that we put out in the media. And for them to see us so unorganized and just pure anarchy in the streets, it gives them a lot of ammunition to say, that's not the kind of country that we want to be. Those aren't the kind of people that we want to emulate. And I agree. I have to agree with our adversaries in that those aren't the people that I want to be. That's not the kind of person that I want to be. And until America can really get itself together and stop promoting this false narrative, and talk to you a little bit about narratives because I am an English professor. I do teach narratives. That's one of the things that I enjoy teaching. And what I tell my students is they have to write their truth and they have to be honest about what their truth is. And they can't just make up a story and try to pass it off as something that is true and that really happened to them. If they really look inside themselves, they can pinpoint a certain thing that is truly important to them and let that one thing shine on the page and let that one thing be what everyone else knows them for. and the kind of person that I will see them as, or that their peers will see them as when we're doing group work. And so let the climax of America's story, let the climax of your own stories be something truly positive and not the negativity that we are seeing all over the news these days. Because remember that you are not the only person that sees that. People outside the country see that. And when you're outside looking in, that God's eye or objective viewpoint makes people who try to spread false narratives about the United States being strong and wealthy and the greatest country in the world, it really makes them look like unreliable narrators. And it's true. I think at this point, anyone that tells you that America has everything you ever wanted and it's the land of opportunity and it offers all of these freedoms, you shouldn't believe them. You absolutely should not believe them. You should take that narrative with a grain of salt and call them out on it. Call them out on it and say, that is a false narrative. That is not true. Make it true. Make it true, and then you can say that everyone else should be like you. If not, don't say it at all. Just keep it to yourselves. That is all I have for you today. Thank you again for joining me here. Obviously not in the kitchen this time, in my office. I'm hanging out in here. But if you'd like to see any more cooking videos, any more random taco memes, or any other videos like this one, or educational videos, whatever you want, please let me know in the comments below, and join me over on the Professor's Kitchen Facebook page as well, where we share recipes and different ideas to get people to engage and learn as much as possible, because that is what the Professor's Kitchen is all about. Ciao for now.